But just take a look at this.
Mom, do you ever feel, not so fresh?
Dear Lord, what am I playing this week? Alright, welcome back to the survival horror show thing that I do, sort of. So this week we're touching on Red Soul Games' new release, brand new off the presses of 2025 of this past April. Post Trauma is a somewhat love letter to the Silent Hill franchise, where you play a guy who wakes up in a nightmarish world that is riddled with guilt and regret and all those James Sutherland sort of feelings. Sans a green army jacket, you play this guy, Roman, a protagonist who seems to be a guy who works in trains for some reason. That is plot points of story that kind of comes fruition if you play the game. Why he's guilty and what happened, and I'm still kind of hashing those details out. But let's get right into it. So how does this game do its Silent Hilling? Well, you can't have Silent Hill without a deep, devout love for mannequins. Does this game do mannequins dirty? Oh, it does. Probably the most mannequin that has mannequined since 1987 fell in love with Kim Cattrall. Do 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 do. All right, that's enough of that. But you get the Silent Hill reference. All right, I digress.
Yes! That's awesome!
So is post-trauma awesome? Well, I think where it hangs its biggest hat is on the hook of atmosphere and art direction. We go from kind of stando places like a deserted high school or a deserted hospital, but then we get these very kind of nightmare landscapes that mix Grecian statues with his recurring nightmare of the train, with these grotesque kind of somewhere between H.R. Giger-esque Lovecraftian beasts. The main one that kind of haunts him is this kind of recurring arachnid lady that's always yelling at him. We'll call her Jill. And Jill is kind of his nemesis character that you're going to come across several times in the game until you actually get to her boss fight. But again, the direction, the way these characters are presented, and the various environments are flawless and spotless and have their own kind of nice identity that isn't just more, mannequining.
I wasn't thinking that. I didn't mean to.
Intent is no comfort. Not for a corpse. Now get away from her.
Maybe more so than atmospheres is its clever use of the fixed camera. There's a lot of scenes like this that just have these clever cinematic sort of the POV shots that really play with our perception of, are we being watched? Is there something following us? It has that nightmare feel, another mannequin, and it also, it gets good play towards the psychological aspects of the game. And then we transition here to this kind of idyllic dreamscape of a garden, very purposeful sculptures and benches and lavender and all these bright colors as we transition from one part of the nightmare to the next. The game kind of shines in these moments, literally and figuratively, as we have this kind of mental break. It prevents us from becoming too, for lack of a better word, battle fatigued by the constant Lovecraftian black and gray and dingy subway stations to kind of leave into this break of a beautiful place and then have to go back into another dark dungeon. It's cleverly directed. I think this is some of the better aspects of the game. So where does the clunk come in? Let's roll up on the clunk. Post-trauma feels the need to have to emulate the room.
I did not. Oh, hi, Mark.
Okay, I actually didn't mean that version of the room. I meant this version of the room.
The hell?
What the hell? What the hell? What the hell is this? Are you okay?
Wow, that was kind of like the same thing. Point is, they have these long first-person segments where you have to solve puzzles in first person, and it's tedious. It's just not that fun. So let's move on to the combat. So I struggled for a long time if I was going to place combat on the good end of the spectrum or the bad end of the spectrum. The combat itself is kind of interesting. It almost takes cues from things like Dark Souls, where you have to lock onto a target, circle it for 20 minutes, and then figure out when you actually have a safe opportunity to attack. You can jump forward, you can jump backwards. While you can't really roll because you're this out-of-shape Roman dude, you still have that ability to kind of move in and out of combat with the melee. The ranged is just kind of standard ranged. It's nothing to write home about. But what is most concerning about this game, and really the funniest part of this whole discussion, is that I could probably count on my two hands how many enemies there are in this game. So to have this really elongated combat system, and then have, maybe I'm exaggerating, but I kid you not, if there's 20 enemies in this game, I would be surprised. Puzzles, on the other hand, again, they're puzzles. I, again, don't know if it's being fair to say that they belong on the clunk side of my assessment, but they're just so standard. You've seen these 1,000 times. So where does this all kind of end up at the end of the day? It's a mixed bag, and it's really hard for me to put my finger on why this game works and why it doesn't. It's an amazing, amazing atmosphere that it puts you in. There's so much good to the shots, the direction, the way the game plays out as far as the various locales go, and the way that they make it their own. But there's just something really weird with the pacing. There's a lot of backtracking. There's a section where you're a little girl, a la Sherry Birkin, if you want to go Resident Evil, or Aline Cedric, if you want to go, or Grace Saunders, or other, if you want to go Alone in the Dark. And nobody ever likes the little kid segments. Like, who wants more of that? So I don't know. It just, the pacing feels off is the only thing I can say about it from the negative aspect. But as far as A Love Letter to Silent Hill goes, it's a really great game. If you're just looking for that kind of feel of psychological horror and boatloads of uncomfortableness with mannequins, Post-Trauma is definitely going to be your jam. Overall, I think it's worth a playthrough. It's not that long of a game, and that's not a negative either. I think it will scratch that itch. It's also on sale right now, if you can catch it on the summer sale, for about $10, and it's never much more than that. So I think for the money and for what this game has to offer, the beauty of its cinematography, its use of fixed cameras are dead on. Its psychological kind of journey is very in line with what you would expect from this niche of the genre. But for me, there was just a really, really weird pacing issue with how few monsters there were, and there's a lot of backtracking, and that's the only detractor. But it's a small one. Even the first-person segments I played up for laughs, but they're not really that bad. They're transitionary. There's maybe one or two. It just felt like you could cut them, and the game would lose very little. But overall, I really think this game does have a lot to offer. So if you really need that Silent Hill itch scratched before we get the Silent Hill F this fall, then I highly recommend Post Trauma. If you made it this far, thank you so much. I appreciate you wasting your time on me. Do the like, subscribe, and comment thing. I really appreciate the comments the most. If you can throw out some games I should be playing, that would be awesome. Thank you so much. Have a wonderful day.
Whoa! This hall is dangerous!